Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Teacher Training Academy. We are halfway through, and there is 1 hour, 50 minutes, 1 hour ahead of us on yet another session. Hi from Vietnam. Hello, Gifty. Hello from Romania. And as you probably know, the Teacher Training Academy is like an interactive entity. So we appreciate chat interaction. Hi from Lima, Peru, Indonesia. So our host and the presenter, let's hope she will be using this interactivity. So keep the chat open, because today is the session on benchmark. And if I could have the next slide, please. So as you can see, we are exactly in the middle. So this is I Teach series. So the I Teach series consists of the sessions on AI, international certificate. Last month we have the level test, and today we have the benchmark test. So this is the complete series. And one more time, by the end of the session, we will calculate who attended all 4 sessions, and those people will receive a session, a series completing certificate. So there are only 3 certificates in the Teacher Training Academy, and they are given to those who complete all the sessions. And the next month, we are starting the final part of the Teacher Training Academy, the Provoke series. And we're going to talk a lot about the international certificate, but very question type oriented. But the aim is to provoke the teaching reality and to provoke students to think differently about, let's say, so common question types that you will have in the international certificate. By tomorrow, you will receive a survey and a summary PDF from this session. And hopefully next week, those who attended 4 sessions in the IT series will receive the certificate of completion. Hi from Argentina and greetings from Guatemala. I hope that you are enjoying your day, and Indonesia as well. So I guess, Monica, the floor is yours, and have fun, share your expert knowledge, and enjoy the show. Thanks a lot, and off you go.
Thank you, Bartek. It is a pleasure for me to be here. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good everything from everywhere. I see that we have people from Vietnam, people from Mongolia, Argentina, Mexico, Guatemala. Let me see what else. Ukraine, nice. Indonesia, Chile, Georgia, nice. Uzbekistan, Dubai, like Thailand, Italy, everywhere. I love being here with you guys today and having this opportunity to share some of the things I have learned after many bumps in the road and many books and many papers to read, and of course many wonderful students to share with, that they've actually are the ones, or they are actually the ones who have taught me the things that I will tell you today. Right? Thank you very much for being here. My name is Monica Sellis. I will be working with you today in this session of I Teach Benchmark. I am a strategic initiatives manager for Pearson. I have recently, of course, been a senior assessment learning consultant for all of LATAM, and of course, I've been working with some other countries in the world right now. Hi from Brazil. I love Brazil. I was there recently and I loved it. Okay, let's get started, shall we? All right. Let me just move the chat slightly to one side of my screen. And then, I see there are people from Turkey. I hope my friends from Turkey are many of them connected. Thank you so much. All right, so before we start talking about how do I use benchmark in my classes, or how do I use information I retrieve from these tests, how do I use benchmark anyway? Before we start talking about that, which is a wonderful conversation, one of my favorite conversations after coffee and pizza, let's just refresh some ideas in terms of, in general about assessment. Oh, people from Melbourne, Bolivia, my God, Japan. I love that everyone is here. Okay, so this is important to know. Of course, we know that there are different types of assessment. There's summative assessment, there's formative assessment, and of course, there are diverse assessment tools that we must use for different purposes. Yeah. But one of the things that I wanted to remember with you, is that assessment must have a clear intention. Yeah? We shouldn't assess for the sake of assessing. We shouldn't just assess for having a score out of a student or having a grade out of a student. We need to have more purpose when we assess. Yeah, and this is why dynamic, strategic, diverse assessment makes an institution a very good looking one, and makes you a teacher a very good looking teacher. Even more than you probably know. Why is that? Imagine that I am a researcher, and imagine that I just base my research upon one paper. How reliable would that be? Not very much, right? I need to, of course, exercise the principle of triangulation. What is triangulation? Is using different sources of information. In research, that would be different papers, different types of papers, different information or sources of information to base my research upon that. The same thing happens with assessment. I need to use dynamic, strategic, and a diverse array of tools to triangulate all of this information and be and actually provide a more reliable assessment of a student or a group of students. Yeah, so that's one of the most important things to know. Yeah? Another thing I want to remind you, it's we assess to make decisions. Yeah? We don't just assess to have a grade out of a student. We assess to make decisions. Decisions in what sense? In what to do next with our lessons, how to plan our lessons, how to plan our particular program or a course, how to remediate with our students, how to reduce learning gaps, whether a student is certified or not, whether a student can access a postgraduate degree or not, etc., etc. So there's so many decisions that can be made out of assessment. They're so important to know. Some points to remember. So assessing is comparing, it's looking for and accessing crucial information about your student's performance. And this information must be well communicated, interpreted, and used. This is so important about benchmark. You'll see in a minute. So the information we get from tests must be well communicated, well interpreted, and well used. Yeah. And not only that, but it must come from, as I mentioned earlier, diverse sources and for different assessment purposes, types and tools of assessment. Yeah? This makes it more reliable. Our whole assessment ecosystem, it makes it more reliable. Yeah? And it must be systematic. When and how I assess with what tool, for what purpose, this has to be systematic. Assessment has to be all of these things. Yeah. And interpreting the information that the assessment or the tests, regardless of their format, regardless of their purpose, interpreting the information that they give us is key. And of course, to do that, we need a system of reference to look at that information from a particular perspective. Other than that, it's just going to give us the same information always. Hello in Colombia. I'm in Colombia. I actually am in Colombia too. So hello in Colombia. Hello Philippines, Vietnam, Pakistan, many other countries people are sharing. Ukraine too, Turkey, Mexico, Macedonia. Oh, nice. Kenya. Welcome all. Welcome all of you. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. So in order to use this information well, what do we need? We need to come back to basics and remember the different purposes that specific tests are there for. There are tests or assessment tools that help us place students. There are tests or assessment tools that help us benchmark or measure the progress or monitor the learning of students. There are tests that allow us to certify student skills when there has been a consolidation that you help students achieve with a benchmarking test. And of course, there are verification tests that allow you to verify your skills for other high stakes environments, like getting a visa, a residence, a scholarship, etc., etc. So there are different purposes, and according to the purpose of the test, we have a type of test, and according to that, we also have a type of information. So the information that a placement test is going to give you is not the same, and of course doesn't have the same use as a benchmarking or monitoring progress test is going to give you. The same happens with the certification test. The way it assesses and the information that it provides to you is not the same as the previous two types of tests. So we cannot make decisions in a wrong way with the wrong test. So today we are going to be talking about the benchmark test from Pearson, which is, what is this about? Well, how do we use it? And the use of it is essentially to monitor learning progress and show proficiency and help consolidate and reduce learning gaps, and so many beautiful things that we can do that we cannot do with just a placement test or a certification test, because that's too late. So let's see the beauty of benchmark and how we can use the information it provides to us and how we can use it. How can I teach with benchmark, right? You guys ready? Ready, set, go. Okay, let's use this chat that I love, because I'm here in the chat too. My God, Serbia, Switzerland, Kali. Oh my God, Turkey, Brazil, so many people from Brazil and Greece and Mexico, Nepal. My God, hello to all of you. And Italy, I love Italy. I think I should have been born in Italy. All right, wonderful. Guatemala. You guys, let's use the chat to answer these questions. Do you use benchmark or the English benchmark for young learners? Because remember that we have two tests. One for young learners, which you can apply from 6 years old all the way up to 13, 14 years old. And then we have another one, which is the benchmark test, which has the same purpose, same system. Let's think about it like that. But you apply it to students that are older than 14, 15-year-olds on and adults on. So do you use it? Do you not? And what do you use it for? Let's say, we apply it in our school, but what do you use it for? Do you use it at the beginning of the process, at the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year? When and how and what do you use it for, right? Let's see what answers we get here in the chat. Okay. You all use it, okay, to check the existing level. All right. It serves for placements and monthly assessments. All right. Some of you use it for kids, others use it for adults. We already have programs in schools to apply every semester to measure the development, like the progress. Beautiful. 2 times in an academic year to see the progress. All right. Okay. To those of you who don't, hopefully after this session, you will want to do it. Yeah. Okay. Yet. Exactly. You don't use it yet, Eva. All right. Let me show you the beauty of this test. Yeah? Let me just show you the beauty of this test. There you go. Look. These are the reports that the test give us. Yeah? Or the tests give us. Remember that benchmark test is a test that is not multi-level, right? Let me just take a little time. Let's make a little parenthesis here, a little time to tell you about this. The benchmark test, the one for young learners and also the one for adults, it's not a multi-level test. Why is that? A multi-level test is a test that assesses from pre-A1 all the way up to C2, like the whole range of what you can do with a language. So if you take a multi-level test, which are generally placement tests and sometimes certification tests, what this does, it's like a screening. Yeah? So it tells you where you are, in what level of the CEFR you are. Yeah? If it's a placement test, this information, you use it at the beginning of a process, maybe at the beginning of the school year, at the beginning of an educational process. If it's a certification test, you use it at the end, yeah, to certify all the things that you could consolidate with the help of the teacher. Yeah? Now, multi-level tests generally assess specific parts, like not the whole array of can-do statements that make up a specific band of the CEFR. So you know that the CEFR has got a lot of can-do statements. And if you think about the global scale of English, there are even more. So we got a lot of can-do statements in each one of the bands. So assessing well would mean to assess or create items that would assess all of those can-do statements. And that would take us, an 8-hour test or something like that. Now, so what placement tests and certification tests do, it's just a screening. So they take a little bit of an A1, a little bit of an A2 can-do statements, a little bit of B1 can-do statements, and they assess in that way. And they give you a general idea of where you are. Benchmark test is different because we want to go deep into the level and show you teachers exactly what's going on, exactly what are the strengths and the weaknesses of your students. Then we have to go really deep, so we have to really assess in a very thorough way. So we go deep, and this means that we create items and we assess more can-do statements per or more percentage of the whole band. Yeah, so this is why we have to divide by levels. So the benchmark test is designed in this way. So you'll find that the benchmark test for adults has 4 levels. The first level, it will be assessing you between pre-A1 and A2. Yeah? The second level will be assessing you between B1 and B1 plus. The third level will be assessing B2, B2 plus, so that we can really go deep into those levels. And the fourth level is going to assess C1 and C2. Yeah. Same thing happens with the young learners test. It will be divided into 6 levels, so we can go deep, deep, deep into what is going on with our students. And when that happens, this is the report that it gives us. Yeah. Close parenthesis. So the report is going to, this is a report of a student, yeah, a fictitious, hypothetical, not a live student, yeah, from fantasy. So it's going to give us the score in GSC. Yeah. So for example, this student got a 36 as an overall score. If you look below where I said the global scale of English, 36 is the beginning of an A2 plus. Yeah. So that would be specific to know where exactly in the A2 or A2 plus the student is. Yeah. But not only this is going to also give us the current capabilities of that student, what he can generally do. And that is going to break down in this visual chart, as you see, per skill in GSC, where the student is ranking at the moment. Yeah, so it says here, for example, that in listening, the student is at 36, is at the 36 point in GSC. 36, if we look at the global scale of English, is also the beginning of A2 plus. In reading, the student is on a 38. 38 is a little bit after the beginning of A2 plus. But if we look at, for example, writing, the student is 31. 31 is the beginning of A2, not A2 plus. You see? And then writing, the student is good for writing. So it's about to consolidate the A2 plus level. And very soon he will be able to start the B1 level. You see? So it's very specific information, because one thing is knowing that you are on an A2. Another thing is knowing if you are in the beginning, the middle, or the end of that band, specific part. And remember, each number of the GSC is going to give you can-do statements. It represents a group of can-do statements in all 4 skills. So 32 represents a group of can-do statements in all 4 skills. 40 will be doing the same. Any number of the GSC will do the same, right? So this is the first part of what this report is going to give us. Yeah. Of course, it's going to give us a breakdown in terms of skills, in a more qualitative sense. Yeah. So it's going to give us what's the performance of the student in that particular skill. It's going to give us recommended activities, as you see. So this is what this student or this group has to do, yeah, to make progress according to where they are. Yeah? And then, of course, it gives us suggested GSC learning objectives that this student or that group of students needs to work on, okay? So that they can make progress, because probably these can-do statements are the ones that are not consolidated yet, so that students are not able so far to move forward. Yeah. So I can do a lot of progress management here with these reports. There is also another report that the benchmark test gives us, and it's the progress report. The progress report happens when you have taken the benchmark test more than once. So if you have taken it 2 times, you can make a comparison. So this comparison between a couple of tests, 2 or 3 tests, is a progress report. So you can see how students are making progress there. Yeah? Coming back to this, the report is also going to give you a course mapping. If you happen to use any coursework from Pearson, you will be able to see something like this. It's going to give you per skill where in the courseware and level that you use, you can actually locate activities, the page, the level, etc., where you can locate activities so that you can provide these activities or signal these activities to your student or a group of students so that they can do them, practice, and then move forward to foster progress. Yeah, so these are activities in your Pearson courseware that you can use to reinforce whatever your students need to be reinforcing in terms of each one of the skills according to the score and diagnosis we got from the test. Okay, this is a beautiful thing. I love it because it makes you go back to the curriculum. It makes you go back to the courseware. It makes you go back to class. Benchmark is beautiful because of this. Yeah, it's not just 32, 36, 82, blah. It's this. Okay, so it gives us a lot of beautiful things. So benchmark gives you specific GSC scores, recommended activities, can-do statements, courseware mapping, progress reports. Wow. A lot of things in those reports, not only individually, but in a group, yeah, for your group reports. Yeah. What can you do with this information? Good question, huh? How about we use the chat and you tell me, what do you think we can do with all this information that the benchmark test provides to us? Anything comes up to mind? I'll sip my coffee while you write down a couple of things in the chat. Let's see. I see that some people base their program on GSC indicators. Lovely. It's so great. Look, I see plan our classes better. Yeah, that's one good thing you can do. Do better planning. Yes, it's another great thing you can do. Improving approach to outcomes and objectives. Absolutely. Good information, motivation, target, orientation. Yeah. Set clearer objectives for your classes, for your students. Yes. It seems to be a great tool to deepen students' learning. Yeah, because this is not something that only you are going to see as a teacher. This is also something that students will be able to see. So that makes them empower themselves with information and really understand what they need to do, where they are, where they're going. And it's very motivating. Plan our class better. Accelerate learning pace to reach the desired level. Yeah. Increase awareness about strengths and weaknesses. assessing better. Personalization, yes, definitely. Motivation, hundreds of things to do. Yeah. This is the impact, positive impact that you can have, or positive washback that you can have out of this test. Yeah. You see, it's good for you as a teacher because you can do all of these things that you mentioned: personalization, progress management, etc., etc. But also for your students. So the impact should be very positive. Yeah. But if we're thinking about, a more academic, teacher-oriented, what to do with this information, let me tell you some of the things that you can do, right? Bear with me, because this is the part of this I Teach session that is a little bit more academic, okay? We're going to be talking about a very nice topic that I love, which is learning gaps, right? You ready for this? Let me know in the chat if you're ready for this. Yeah. I love all the answers you have given of what you can do with this information. All right, let's go. Ready, set, go. Okay, so what is a learning gap? Yeah. Look, benchmark is a beautiful test. Remember, it is not a placement test. So it's not a test that I suppose you could use it, but it's not the best use you can give it. Yeah? So it's not a placement test. Yeah, it really is not. It is not a certification test per se. It's really not. It is a test for monitoring progress. And because it gives you all of this beautiful information that I just mentioned, this test is the perfect assessment tool to characterize, identify, manage, and reduce something that is called learning gaps. But let's see what a learning gap is. What is that? Yeah. And you'll see that it's a very important thing. Yeah. My presentation just went a little crazy. Let me see. There you go. Good. Learning gap. So what is a learning gap? Look, when we talk about curriculum, because this is a learning gap is a type of curriculum gap. So when we talk about curriculum, the curriculum field is a very polysemic one. This means that if you go to look for information or papers about this is going to be, you're going to have many different perspectives out of the same particular phrase or the same particular word, yeah, or concept, yeah. But in general, what we can call a learning gap is that space or that chunk or that amount of can-do statements or skills or abilities or etc. that your student hasn't quite consolidated yet and needs to consolidate. Yeah? A learning gap appears when you have an educational objective. How is that? An educational objective, it's like, okay, after this particular school year, at the end of this particular school year, what I expect is that my students graduate and can be promoted to the next level or next course and next year with a B1 level in a consolidation, yeah, with a consolidated B1 level. Yeah? That can be one educational goal, yeah, or one educational objective. We all have these objectives for all of our courses, for all of our particular school years, etc. These are sometimes determined by us teachers, but most times they're determined by the curriculum developers or your institution per se. So the learning gap appears when I have an educational goal and then I assess my student and see where they are. Yeah. If there is a space between where my student is and where they should get to, that is called a learning gap. Okay, this is in general how we can define a learning gap, right? Are learning gaps bad? No, they are natural. You can have the best teachers, the best students, the best technology, the best everything, and you will still have learning gaps. They are natural because that's the nature of a learning and educational process, to take you from one place to another place. The bad thing is not doing anything about the learning gaps. That is the bad thing. All right. So we have to do something about it. To do something about them, we need to be able to identify them, measure them, like really characterize them, like, that's it, that's your name, that's how much you weigh, how many kilometers this is the size of the learning gap. Because this is the other thing. When we talk about learning gaps in the educational world, many people talk about them, but it's like a monster that nobody has seen. Nobody knows what color they are, or etc. etc. So we can do it with benchmark. No? Let me show you how. So this is the thing about learning gaps. Learning gaps are that space between where your student is and where your student needs to go. Yeah. Let me. So how do I identify, characterize, yes, your students' learning gaps, or our students' learning gaps? I'm missing an O over there. Sorry about that. Yeah. So this is the formula that I am going to give you. Yeah. The first step, it's necessary to implement assessment practices that generate granular information. So you need to do some assessment and implement some assessment that gives you granular information, very specific information for you to be able to identify, like characterize this information or this learning gap, right? And then, of course, this information needs to highlight in a specific and timely manner the competence-related aspects to be improved. Yeah, that's also important. It is necessary to train teachers for this purpose, which is what we're doing today. Yeah. So if you look on the right-hand side of my slide, yeah, we need to use tools that allow us to get that granular information. These tools need to be student-friendly, like Benchmark, easy to use, like Benchmark, easy to analyze, like Benchmark, because you just saw the reports. They're beautiful. Agnostic and standardized, like Benchmark. Why agnostic and standardized? Because this isn't assessing the vocabulary items on page 22. Yes, this isn't assessing the grammar topics on page 55, unit 6. This is assessing can-do statements, learning objectives. So it's agnostic. It's not courseware dependent. Yeah, it's standardized and agnostic, like Benchmark. Yeah? It needs to the tool that you use for characterizing the learning gaps needs to provide granular information. Yes, for you to be able to understand progress measurement versus placement only, like Benchmark. And these tools need to provide specific and personalized data, like Benchmark. Yeah. So Benchmark is a beautiful tool to do this. Let me show you. It is important that you have the right tool. Yeah. We just saw the Benchmark really checks many of the necessities that I have in terms of how to measure, characterize, identify, etc., the learning gaps. Yeah. But in terms of understanding the size of the gap, how big it is, how many meters, kilometers, yeah, we have the tool, but we also need a unit of measurement, a system of reference. Yeah. So we need those two things, the tool and the system of reference that give us that information that we need so that we can really go, this is the learning gap. This is how much it weighs. This is how long it is. This is how many learning objectives it is about. Now I can do something about it. Yeah. So we need that unit of measurement. And the unit of measurement, as I mentioned before, is my beautiful friend, the global scale of English. Why is this useful? First of all, the global scale of English is nothing different from the CEFR. Okay, let's just have that clear. It's not that you have to either use the GC or the CEFR. No. The global scale of English is like looking very deep into the Zephyr bands, yeah? Because it allows me to understand how long a band is, how long an A1 is, when an A1 starts, when it is the middle of it, when is the end of it, when is it that I am consolidating, and when is it that the other band starts, yeah? So it's not like we someday magically wake up and we are an A2. It happens over time, and it happens. The global scale of English allows us to understand this in a better way. Yeah? Let me show you how. As you see, for example, if you look at the GSC, we have that an A1 starts in a 22 of the GSC and goes all the way up to a 30 on a GSC. Remember that each number of the GSC represents a group of descriptors, a group of learning objectives in each one of the 4 skills. So we have in 22, there are probably a group of can-do statements for listening, speaking, writing, reading that belong to 22. When I am in a 22, I work on those can-do statements, I consolidate those can-do statements, and then I can move forward to a 23 and then work on those. And then I can move forward to a 24 and then I consolidate those. Yeah. So why is the global scale of English wonderful for characterizing learning gaps? Because it will tell you the size of the learning gap. If you just apply any other test or don't use the global scale of English, what this is going to give you is just, your student is on an A1. Oh my God, they're supposed to be on A2. But this is very wide information. It's very, open to interpretation. It's not very specific and granular. But in turn, if you use the GSC and you use benchmark, for example, and it tells you that your student is on a 23, and you go, oh my God, my student should be on a 32. Okay, now I know what's the size, 22, 32. Okay, 10 points in the GSC. And also I know which are the can-do statements that are represented by each one of those numbers. So I know exactly the group of can-do statements that my student needs to work on to consolidate. There's the magic, you see? So you use benchmark because it gives you the information that you need. And you use the GSC to do it so you can characterize, manage, reduce the learning gaps, right? So this is how you take benchmark to your class, by using it to characterize those learning gaps and then doing something in class to reduce the learning gaps, help your students consolidate the levels, and be a successful teacher. You see, no other test is going to give you this information. Can you do this with a placement test? No, you can't. Can you do it with a certification test? No, it's too late to do that. Before you certify, you should be able to reduce the learning gaps, and reducing the learning gaps is the same as consolidating levels. Yeah, if you reduce, you consolidate. If you reduce the learning gap, you consolidate, reduce, consolidate, reduce, consolidate, until you have consolidated the whole Zephyr band, the whole A2, or the whole B1, or the whole etc. Then is when you can tell your student, darling, go take your B1 certification test, you will pass it. You see? So it's not anymore like we're blind to the whole process. We are seeing for the first time, right? Everyone okay? All good? Too complex? Or are we doing good? Doesn't it slow you down? No, what a good question. Not really. Because this is an analysis that maybe the first time, because you're learning to identify where everything comes from, maybe it takes you a little longer, but this is only the first time. Once you do it again and again, it's just like water. For me, it's just like water. It's better this way. It's more complex not having all this information, because then I have to do a lot of guessing work with my students. And then the activities and the plans that I do are random. Yeah. So it can work for some students, it cannot work for others. It's, in this way I can personalize more. And it's actually, it helps me work faster and more to the point. Yeah, what a good question. Yeah. All right, all good. It says fine, clear. All right. How does benchmark help me identify, manage, and reduce learning gaps? Just to say it all over again, it gives me concrete information. So it tells me exactly where inside the Common European Framework my student is. So exactly where in an A2, where in a B1, where in an A1 my student is beginning, the middle, the end, and exactly what are the can-do statements that I need to work on with my students. And these numbers and those can-do statements allow me to measure quantitatively and qualitatively the learning gap of my students. When I have measured it, I can start working on consolidating and managing that progress and reducing that learning gap. Those three things are the same thing. It also gives me granular information to make decisions. I have a question here. Are there courses it works better with? It works best with any course. Claire, that's the good news. Yeah. If you're working with any Pearson courseware, it works with anyone because it's agnostic, as I mentioned earlier, remember? It's agnostic, so it means it's not tied to the vocabulary items in page 22. Yeah, it's tied to the GSC and Common European Framework learning objectives, the can-do statement. So it's standardized. So it can work with any courseware. But it works better with the Pearson courseware because the reports can take you back specifically to the pages of the book where you can use activities to provide remediation to do some progress. So you can use it with any course. Yeah. All right, so it gives you granular information to make decisions. Yeah. So look at this. Where in the GC my students are, where in the band of the Common European Framework my students are, etc. Oh, just one particular parenthesis here, a little asterisk here for some of my friends from some countries that wanted to log into this session for this explanation. When you apply the benchmark test, sometimes it can give you specific nomenclature in the reports. Sometimes it can give you an NS, sometimes it can give you a BL, my friends from Turkey that wanted to know this, and sometimes it gives you an asterisk. What is this about? Yeah. Remember that the benchmark test is applied by levels. So selecting the level is so important. Selecting the right level is so important. Yeah. If you are applying the test to know where your students are and you're thinking more about a more multi-level approach, this should be a placement test, and it should be applied at the beginning of a process, and it should be a placement test, not a monitoring progress test like benchmark. This is different. You should know where, in general, in what band of the CEFR your students are, in order to be able to choose the correct level of the benchmark test. Because if we don't choose the correct level, let's say that your student, we apply a benchmark test that assesses in A1, A2, and pre-A1. And then I have a student that, let's change the example. Let's say that I apply a B1 level benchmark test to my student. And in reality, my student is not in a B1. My student is in an A2 or an A1. What's going to happen is that you're going to get a lot of these BLs below level, because your student essentially is below level. Yeah? So it is important that you apply a placement test first. Yeah, and then you treat the selection of the levels with that understanding first. We of course have our consultants, our sales representatives, and our all Pearson people that can help you out with the selection of the levels. And this happens mostly the first time you're going to apply benchmark. After the first time, you got it. You don't need, you already know what levels to apply. So it's the first time. Yeah? But this is the reason why we get the BL, etc. Is this a bad result? Is this a result that I cannot use? Of course not. This is also a good result. Yeah, of course it is better if you apply the right benchmark level and instead of BL you get 22. That is useful in the sense that you know the level of the GSE, CEFR, then the candidate statements, etc. But if you get a BL, what the test is telling you is your student is below the level in this particular skill. So all you have to do is go to the GSE, look at the candidate statements that are below the level that you applied. Yeah. So if you applied B1, then look at the candidate statements below B1 and then work on those candidate statements with your students. So you can also use these particular results in your test. Yeah. So that's essentially it. If you want more information about it, make sure to contact us. I'm here for you. And my friends in Turkey that I know wanted to know more about it, I'm here for you. Okay? All right. Oh, I have some questions in the chat. What is the best way to choose the right level for EBYL if we do not apply level tests before EBYL? Okay, what a good question. Let's dive into that one. The first thing we, of course, recommend is apply the placement test. We have one, which is called a level test for young learners. Simple, beautiful. You can take it online. Beautiful. If you cannot do it, then of course you have to take into account the following things. First, how many hours of instruction your students have taken so far. Yeah. So if they are in a third grade, how many hours of instruction they have taken before that third grade. Yeah. So according to that, we can make an idea of what CEFR level they're in. Yeah. Remember that the levels of the English benchmark for young learners test are divided and they are they kind of overlap. Yeah. So we know that the first one is measuring from 10 all the way up to, I'm forgetting right now, but I'm thinking it's towards the end of an A1. Yeah, like 20 something or 30. Yeah. But then level 2 starts on a 16. Yeah. So there you go. So if you have a student who is very, very, very basic, who hasn't had many hours of instruction, etc., chances are he is between that 10 and that 16. Yeah. And on top of that, if your students still don't write, then level 1 is the best level to apply. But if your students have more than 120 hours of instruction and they already know how to write a little bit, etc., and they're not starting that, but they're very basic still, then the level 2 is a good level to start. So what you have to look is not only at the CEFR level that the levels of the benchmark test are covering, but also at the range of the GSC that these levels are covering. That is key. So if you understand that level 1 starts, the range is from 10, look at the GSC here on the screen. It's from 10 all up the way to 30, if I'm not wrong. And then level 2 is a 16 and all the way up to a 36 or something, if I'm not 440, if I'm not wrong. Then you understand how it goes. Like, oh, okay, if I apply level 2, if I have students below that 16, between 10 and 16, probably I'm going to have problems there. Yeah. So that is how you make that decision. Also, think lower. Yeah. Not necessarily higher. Oh, my students are supposed to be in this level, so I'm going to apply this particular benchmark test level. That is one way to use this test, but the test is going to tell you the reality. One thing is that your students are supposed to be there. The other thing is that there's probably a huge learning gap or just a learning gap. You want to locate the learning gaps. Yeah. With this test, you want to get the real results. This is not a test to pass or fail. The benchmark test is not to pass or fail. The benchmark test is to see the reality so that you can do something about it on time. You see? Other than this, please contact us, yeah, and we'll help you out with this selection of the levels. Yeah? Okay, more questions here. Is there a sample test for students to reinforce their English level? Well, one thing there, sample tests. There are practice tests on the website where you can take the benchmark and the level test for young learners. Yes, so maybe somebody from Pearson helps me out to put here the website, the URL where you take the tests. In there, you can find practice tests. But there's something in mind. When we talk about level tests for young learners, and specifically this one, benchmark test, we're talking about a type of test that is called low stakes test. Low stakes tests are tests that we apply to inform the process of learning, to do something about the consolidation of levels of students. It shouldn't have higher stakes than that. Yeah, so your students shouldn't be afraid of failing when they take a benchmark test. Your students shouldn't be thinking that they're taking a certification test, because they're not. They're taking a diagnostic test in many ways, and a progress measurement test that is going to tell them good information about what they can do to improve. Yeah, is the test you would want to take before actually failing a certification test. Yeah. So that being said, low stakes tests don't connect with the idea or concept of test preparation, because you don't need to prepare students for the test. Yeah, because this is a low stakes test. You should want to see the bad parts, the bad results, the reality, and the good parts too, right? To do something about it. And then apply benchmark again and see how that progress actually went. What happens here is not test preparation, then it is familiarization. So it is how you familiarize students with how the test is going to be, the type of questions they're going to have, but that's it. Please make your students feel comfortable about taking this test. It's not a high stakes test. Don't give a grade out of this. This is just to take a look at how things are and provide them with the right tools to improve, right? That being said, we have more information here, more questions. How can you use it for adults? There's the benchmark test for adults. It has 4 levels. You can apply each one of the 4 levels. Level 1 measures between pre-A1 and A2 plus. Level 2 measures B1 and B1 plus. Level 3 or level B2 measures B2 and B2 plus, and the 4th level measures C1 and C2. So according to your students' level, having, of course, apply the placement test first, apply the level that you would want to. You can get the same information, then you can manage the learning gaps, foster the progress of students, and after at least 60 to 70 hours of instruction, you should take the test again so that you can see what progress has actually happened. Yeah. Okay. Oh, somebody is talking about designing a test. All right, wonderful. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's finish it up, because I could stay here for a lot of hours. As you see, this is one of my favorite topics. But anyways, the benchmark test is also going to give you the ability to locate the gap, the learning gap, yeah, as learning objectives. So you see, it gives you the measurement in numbers, quantitatively, of the GSE, and it gives you also the qualitative measurement of the learning gap. What are the learning objectives that your students need to reinforce, and what recommended activities they need to do so that you can do remediation workshops, or include this in your planning or in your lesson planning, etc., so that your students do work to foster progress and consolidate the level and make progress. Yeah, so it gives you both quantitative and qualitative information. These are my conclusions for today, my dear friends. Enough of blindness, enough of being blind to what really is going on in the educational process of our students and our teaching process. Enough about that, enough about random decisions, enough about that. We now have the tools and the data to do it well, faster, more specific, personalized, really useful. We cannot reduce or manage what we don't measure and identify well. So we cannot reduce learning gaps as long as we don't really understand and see and measure how they are. The benchmark test can do that for you. So how can you teach with the benchmark test? This way. The only way to get this data is to use the right assessment tool and use this information strategically. Yeah. To use it, you take it to your classroom, you include it in your planning, you include it in your remediation, you include it in the autonomous work that your student has to do, personalized for them, so that they can work on consolidating and reducing those learning gaps. Being purposeful on reducing learning gaps needs data and remediation based upon this reliable data. And implemented this cycle, yes, teaching with benchmark. You applied, you use the information, you take it to class, you include it into planning, you include it into the personalization of your autonomous learning that you designed for your students. And then you take the benchmark again, yes, and then you measure the progress and how this helped you to reduce the learning gap, consolidate the levels, and help your student make progress. When you do that, you can, of course, know that this is a safe path to consolidate levels and to certification. When you finish consolidating, it is when you can tell your student, take the certification test, you are going to pass it. Yeah. Any final questions or thoughts? Let me see. I see a lot of thank yous. Yeah. All right, wonderful. You can go to our website and find out more information about the benchmark test, definitely. And you can download a folder with a sample report and with a lot of information about how the benchmark test works. After that, if you want more information, please contact your sales representative, sales consultant, the learning consultant, all your Pearson people, and we will be able to guide you a lot more into how it works. Yeah, of course, the best and most important slide of my presentation, this one. Thank you so much. I hope you use Benchmark and the GSC to teach your students in such a better way, more personalized, more specific, more granular, more useful, and more effective. Okay? Thank you so very much.